Hey everyone, Beardo here, you're watching Minutia Minute, and it's finally time for the video that I've been telling you I'm gonna do since probably the last, since 6 months ago, basically. And that is, of course, my review of Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises. Before I get started, just a little bit of background, a little bit of just kind of the minutia of the evening. I did do the 3-film event at AMC here in my hometown, and it was a lot of fun. However, there were some pretty crazy things that happened during our showings. First of all, they had some problems like getting the movie going, so like Batman Begins started about a half an hour late, and so everything else was kind of rushed along. We did Batman Begins, and then about halfway through Batman Begins, the person I was with was like, "Oh my god, it is so hot in here." And I was sort of so absorbed in the movie that I didn't really realize until they said that, and then I started realizing, yeah, I'm like kind of gushing here. And we get to the end of the movie, all these personnel come in and they are opening doors and they're bringing in fans and like, sorry, AC's broken. And we're going to do our best to cool down the theater in between shows. And so that happened. So after Batman Begins, they sort of flushed out the air in the theater and got us in some colder air, but of course it didn't last very long. In the meantime, they had trivia, and the trivia was absolutely horrible. They were writing the trivia on the fly, basically, in between movies. So the first one they had trivia, it was just kind of whatever. It was very like vague questions that didn't really have good answers, or if they had good answers if you had like watched one specific interview with one specific person. Like there was one question like, Christopher Nolan has described each of the Batman movies with one word, and one different word for each film, and what are those 3 words? And it's like, I don't know, like, I suppose if I saw that exact interview with him, I could tell you, but like, that's just like, it's not a good question. Anyway, I'm done ranting about that. So, they cleared out the air, got some colder air in there, we started up Dark Knight, and it's like, okay, this movie's like a half an hour longer, and we were just gushing within like 15 minutes of this movie starting. And, finally, lights come up. I mean, it was a blast, even with all the heat. Like, watching those 2 movies back to back was just a joy, and, the excitement was really ramping up for Dark Knight Rises. They open up all the doors again, and they're blowing fans in and trying to cool everybody off, and the guy comes in with more trivia. And he's even said, like, this is gonna be better trivia the second time around. I have a little more time to write it. And, the trivia was, again, horrendous. Like, the second time around was actually worse because there were some questions that he didn't actually have the right answers for. So, for example, there was a multiple choice question: who was the second person to play Catwoman? And the choices were Eartha Kitt, Michelle Pfeiffer, Halle Berry, and Anne Hathaway. And of course, anyone who knows anything about this kind of nerdy stuff, like anyone going to see this would, knows that it's Lee Merriweather. And so there were some people who knew it but were kind of keeping quiet, and there were other people taking the wrong guesses. Of course, all the answers were wrong. So someone said like Halle Berry, someone said Michelle Pfeiffer, and finally someone said Eartha Kitt, which is the closest, and he's like, yep, that's it. And I couldn't resist. I spoke up. I was like, okay, so just so you guys know, it's Lee Merriweather. Like, that, none of those answers are correct. And he looked at me like, no, that's right, it's Eartha Kitt. It's like, no, it's Lee Merriweather. And then a couple other people behind me chimed in, and he just kind of looked at us, and he's like, he just didn't know what to do. And I was like, okay, well, feel free, give the prize to the person who gave the correct wrong answer. I don't want your prize. And so they got their answer. Hopefully I didn't ruin it completely for them, but hopefully it wasn't a Kanye West moment on my part, but seriously, like, I don't know what else to do. I can't keep quiet on those kinds of things. And like I said, I mean, I didn't want their prizes anyway, because the prizes, it's like, you're going to a Batman movie, you want Batman prizes. They were giving away old posters to like totally unrelated movies. So like, there was a Twilight poster, like sacrilege, right? There was like a Ted poster, there was a Snow White and the Huntsman poster, and there's nothing Batman related. So like, when they announced trivia, I was like, well, A, I'm gonna win, and B, it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna get a Dark Knight Rises poster or something, and of course it came out with that stuff. So anyway, AMC definitely dropped the ball on the event. However, what's important are the 3 movies shown on this card. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and of course, The Dark Knight Rises. As I said, it was a blast watching Batman Begins. I hadn't watched Batman Begins in a long time. I purposely waited to watch these movies. I haven't watched them in probably this entire year. And so sitting down, finally getting to watch them again was really great, and it's really amazing to see, because, like, I was so blown away by Batman Begins when it came out. Like, I had a very specific idea of what I wanted from a Batman movie, and if you want to know why Tim Burton's Batman movies suck, go watch James Donnelly's Batman videos, because, I mean, he hits on everything and really does a great job. I don't 100% agree with everything. I actually don't mind the other Batman movies, but not necessarily because I don't like them because they're Batman movies. Like, I enjoy the Tim Burton Batman as a Tim Burton movie, you know, it's kind of like an Elseworlds kind of an enjoyment, but I don't think of it as a Batman movie. And, so, you know, going into this, it's like we're getting a fresh start, and I want, you know, there's some very specific things I want to have happen in this movie. But of course, I never thought in a million years they would happen until I sat down and I'm watching, and, you know, it got to about the point when he's holding Flass upside down, interrogating him and dropping him and raising him back up and dropping him. And I just sort of had this, like, gut reaction of, like, this is exactly the movie that, like, if they let me make a Batman movie, this is exactly the movie that I would have made. And so, I mean, it was just, you know, it was an amazing experience. And so watching that, and then watching The Dark Knight immediately afterwards on the big screen is just incredible. Because, like, Batman Begins is the Batman movie I always wanted to see, and The Dark Knight is the Batman movie I would have always wanted to see but never would have thought to make myself. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just an incredible movie. It's not a superhero movie, it's a crime drama, you know? And it's, I mean, dozens of people have said that before, but I'm going to say it again. And so, I mean, the movie really rises above its genre and is just a great, great film. And so getting those paired and, you know, your heart's racing. You're absolutely stoked. They air out the theater one more time, lights go down, and The Dark Knight Rises begins. And the fanboy in me really liked it. The film critic in me, and I am definitely an armchair film critic, I don't enjoy movies easily. I wish I could, but I mean, honestly, unless it's a really good movie, I'm probably gonna diss it. And much to the annoyance of most people who, you know, just go to the theater to be entertained. Like, I have a very specific set of criteria of what makes a good movie. And the film critic in me did not like it really at all. As a fanboy, like I said, I mean, I was in there 100%, but in terms of quality filmmaking, especially coming out of The Dark Knight, I would give it a C-. Fanboy, A-. Critic, C-. And I never expected it to be The Dark Knight. Like, there's always this element of, like, well, maybe you overhyped it. And I am going to go see it again tomorrow. I'm excited to see it again tomorrow. I'm going to it on the IMAX this time. We'll see what that does because, you know, a huge amount of it was shot on IMAX. But I mean, it's pretty clear what's wrong with the movie, and I know that those things aren't going to go away. And as far as the hype goes, like, I honestly, like, I saw the first preview and you had Jim Gordon with the mask, and he's like, oh, we were in this together, I'm dying. Like, you know, I expected, like, that alone kind of brought my expectations down a little bit. I've still been really excited, but I've automatically kind of went into, like, this isn't going to be as good as The Dark Knight. This is just sort of like the final bow. This is the encore. This is, you know, Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale and Jonathan Nolan and David Goyer and everybody who worked on those first two movies letting out a little steam and giving us, you know, that one last movie that we want. So, you know, frankly, I actually went in with pretty low expectations. I guess that's my point. And I was still honestly pretty disappointed from a critic's perspective. So I'm going to go over the movie with you guys, and spoilers. From here on forward, if you have not seen The Dark Knight Rises, turn off this video. I will not be responsible for you. Because I am going to say whatever comes to my mind. It's hard to talk about this movie without talking about the plot, and so you're stuck with spoilers. So I've given you my first impression. Glad you watched. If you haven't seen The Dark Knight Rises, turn it off. I'd love to talk to you about the rest of this after you've seen the movie. So, you have 5 seconds. let the spoilers begin. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the critics' perspective, and then we're gonna finish with the fanboys' perspective, because there was a lot of fun stuff, and I don't want it to seem like I didn't enjoy the movie, because I did enjoy the movie. And so we're gonna get the nitty gritty, critic side stuff out of the way first. I'm gonna rant a little bit, and then we'll get on to some of the fun stuff and the stuff that I think you should go see the movie for, because there is a lot of stuff worth seeing in this movie. Okay, so first of all, it's really clear to me what's wrong with this movie, and there's two big problems. And the first one is too much in too short a period of time. And I never thought I would say that in a movie that's 2 hours and 45 minutes, but this is an extremely ambitious film. It has got a lot going on. There are lots of new characters, there are there's lots of story that's covered, and I'll get to that a little bit deeper here in just a minute. And it all happens in a whirlwind. You start off the film, Bruce Wayne is basically like a cripple, and he's not Batman. And it's all about him deciding to take up the cowl again, and you're building up all this stuff with Wayne Enterprises, and all these story threads are getting thrown in, and finally he becomes Batman again, and then you have the breaking of the Batman. Then you have him not as Batman again while he's broken. And then you have him making his comeback and being Batman yet again. So it's like already you've got this whole extra chunk of the beginning of the movie that really hinders the development of the breaking, the recovery, and the return that you get in like the traditional Nightfall storyline. You have this whole extra act at the beginning. The other problem is that's not even the story. That's just Bruce Wayne's journey within the story. The overarching plot of the story has to do with Bane taking over Gotham. And Bane comes in, and you have basically, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit on my fanboy side, but basically you have Bane causing no man's land in Gotham. And for those of you who are still watching and didn't want it spoiled, you were warned. You basically get no man's land in this movie too. So basically you're taking, just to put this into perspective, you're taking this chunk of comics, this chunk of comics here, and you're taking a huge chunk of comics down in here, and you're making all of that into one movie. On top of that, you're adding all these new characters. And get ready, more spoilers here. Not only do you have Catwoman, not only do you have Bane, you have Talia al Ghul, and you have Robin. You have a whole new cast of characters, people who are working in Wayne Enterprises. You have a whole new cast of policemen that are in Gotham City. And I mean, it just drags this movie down. 2 hours and 45 minutes is not enough time to cover all the stuff that Christopher Nolan wanted to do. And it's definitely sort of harkens back to this is a terrible comparison, because this movie, in my opinion, is a lot better than the movie I'm about to mention, but there is a similarity. It kind of harkens back to Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, because that's a movie where it's like Avi Arad wanted to do Venom, Tobey Maguire wanted to do Sandman, and someone else wanted to do whatever else. And, basically the point is, it's their last movie, they had a ton of stuff that they still wanted to tell, and so they decided to cram it all into one gigantic thing, and it just becomes kind of a muddled mess. And no one element gets developed enough for you to really be totally invested in it. And that's really the problem with Spider-Man 3, and very much the problem with The Dark Knight Rises. And it's a shame, because frankly, Thomas Hardy as Bane is actually an incredible performance. But we don't, and he's the closest we get to having a fully developed new character. But even with that, it's still not quite there. It's very close. He comes very close, but it's still not quite there. And it's too bad, because Bane is a very interesting character if you do him right. And he clearly was envisioned correctly, but unfortunately all of that vision doesn't come to the audience, because it is chopped up and it is, crammed into this 2 hours and 45 minute just, massive extravaganza. The same thing is doubly true with Catwoman. Anne Hathaway as Catwoman I thought was very, very well envisioned. I felt like she had a lot of potential, and I felt like her acting really conveyed a character that wasn't conveyed in the script. I mean, there are moments, fairly strong emotional moments for Catwoman, and I felt like those moments in the movie, like, I saw Anne Hathaway's acting, and I could see a full character behind her eyes. The problem is, again, the script didn't allow her to have that full character to be developed and worked upon. So all in all, that's the biggest problem. The number one biggest problem with the movie is too much in one big package. The other problem with this movie is, and this is really a shame, and this is the part that, even though this is in some ways a smaller problem, for me it's kind of a bigger problem, because again, coming off of The Dark Knight, which really rises above its genre, The Dark Knight Rises makes no attempt to rise above its genre. It is very entrenched and feels very comic booky. It happens in a couple of ways. First of all, you have, the return of Ra's al Ghul. And it's done in this really convoluted way where you don't know if he came back, or you don't know if he's still dead, if it's just a hallucination that Bruce Wayne's having. And it's very clearly, to me, it really clearly embodies the conundrum that The Dark Knight Rises is, because you have Christopher Nolan, who made two movies that were, for comic book movies especially, were very, very grounded, The Dark Knight especially so, and felt very, very real. And so, there's a reason that you don't see a Lazarus Pit in Batman Begins, because that's not what they're going for. Now, of course, you get to Dark Knight Rises, they decided they wanted to do Talia, and Ra's comes back into play, in a sense. And so then Christopher Nolan sort of has to make this choice of, do I go comic booky or do I go realistic? And so you get this sort of almost, he's almost back to life, but it's almost a hallucination, and it's not clear, because Christopher Nolan clearly couldn't convey one or the other, because no matter what you're portraying, either you're going to portray the Dark Knight, or that legacy, or you're gonna not be able to fully tell the story you're going for in The Dark Knight Rises. And so, again, you got caught in the middle ground. But the biggest thing is the realism overall. The big plot of this movie is Bruce Wayne built a fusion reactor underneath Gotham City that Bane has turned into a bomb. And the second you say, we created clean energy for everyone, my brain shuts off. I don't give a crap, because that's just not the world that we live in. It's not a realistic expectation. It's not a realistic goal. Frankly, you heard it here first, folks, we're going down in flames. I mean, I love the idea of clean energy, but I mean, that's just not a place we're at. And not to say that we'll never be there, but it's just not the world we live in right now. And so when you put that into a comic book movie, especially when you've just had like Iron Man with the arc reactor and all that stuff, it just drags the realism down like a lead weight. And since that's the big plot of the whole movie, I mean, your gut just sinks. Again, this is on a critical level, because that whole premise is pretty problematic. And like, to be fair, Batman Begins had a pretty out there premise too, when you got to the microwave emitter that dries up an opponent's water supply. But again, that's a little more incidental in the scheme of American history. Having this microwave emitter is like a secret weapon that nobody would know about, so maybe it exists, as opposed to renewable energy for everyone is something that we would know if we had it. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a world changer. And so putting that in the movie really, really bugged me. That was the one thing that, from both a fanboy perspective and really a critic's perspective, I did not like that at all. So there's that. The other problem is, some of the logic of the characters was a little topsy-turvy, and again, it's because the movie lacked a little bit of direction, because they were trying to go too many different places at once. They clearly wanted to do kind of a no man's land story, as I said, and so they basically set up this thing where, we're going to set off the bomb unless you leave us alone in Gotham. And so Bane runs Gotham, and it's, no man's land with Bane in charge, kind of that kind of a thing. But of course, you also wanted to do Talia, and so Talia's big plan is to blow up Gotham. And so you have this big strung out thing where, I mean, literally months, Gotham City is in no man's land, and at the end of it, Talia is planning on blowing it up. So it's like, well, why wouldn't she just blow it up right away? And it's because, she's the big reveal at the end. So, again, where are the characters' motivations here? Frankly, for me, if the movie didn't have the reactor thing at all, it would have been a much stronger movie. If this was just a movie about Bane coming to Gotham and decides, I want to be king of Gotham, and he recreates the city in his own image as this big social experiment, that would be a fascinating movie in and of itself. And like, you can have the weapon as like a way to keep people out, but that shouldn't be the be-all end-all of the movie. That should be the actual plot. It should be more about this grand social experiment that Bane has in mind. And he can have Talia at his side as someone who, is a former member of the League of Shadows that has decided that she wants to put her own spin on the Ra's al Ghul mission statement. And Gotham is partly her grand experiment as well. Like, you can have all those things, but the way they gave it to us, they wrapped it in this package of this nuclear reactor, and that just down. The movie went down. And frankly, you've got a nuclear reactor, you've got a war, like the Civil War, and, Bane is underground for a big chunk of the movie, and so it's like this uprising, literally uprising. And frankly, it's kind of the plot for Conquest of Planet of the Apes, guys. I love the Planet of the Apes movies, but anything after the first one is just fluff. It's not high quality material. It can be fun, it can even be a bit deep, and Dark Knight Rises is a bit deep, but it's definitely not something that that is, again, rises to that next level. And I'm speaking specifically of The Dark Knight here, but also Batman Begins, in my opinion, really is operating on another level than this movie. If I were to rate all of the Batman movies from a critical perspective, Dark Knight, Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises. Now, all the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher ones still come in underneath the big three. So in a sense, Christopher Nolan is living up to his, this is the Dark Knight trilogy. And they're advertising the new Superman movie in front of this, and it says, from Christopher Nolan, director of the Dark Knight trilogy. And so, like, the fact that it's still better than those other three that are just dangling down here somewhere, he did at least to some degree live up to those expectations, but there's clearly a sense, and I was talking with someone online about this in the comments below one of my videos, like, it's true, and he said this, so credit to, I think it was Archangel, I don't know the numbers after your name, sorry, but he said, Christopher Nolan's clearly done with the franchise already, and so this feels like a very bored attempt at giving us what we want, and I totally agree with that, it really was. So, you got all these characters, you got relatively unrealistic premise, creating unrealistic motivation for the characters, and all in all, it feels more comic booky. There's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of craziness, but it really does feel very rudimentary as well. The Dark Knight is really, it's like a chess game, the way the story unfolds and the characters interact with each other. Dark Knight Rises is a little more like checkers. It's not chess. It's just hop to the end and crown your thing and hop back, as opposed to, the build-up that is The Dark Knight. So that's my critical review of the movie, C-. Fanboy review of the movie now. Here we go. I'm gonna nerd out. There was a lot of cool stuff in the movie, guys, and it is worth going to see. I'm really excited, actually, to see this movie in IMAX because over an hour of it was shot on IMAX cameras, and seeing that extra blown up is going to be just outstanding. This movie does live up to the expectation of being very, very epic. This is a movie that operates on a very, very grand scale. Let's see, so Catwoman, again, like, her character, even though she wasn't fully realized in this movie, what you see of her is really strong. She definitely feels more like the Catwoman we know and love from the comics. She is, first of all, she's a cat burglar, which, I'm thinking about it, and I'm not sure if any of the movies, from Halle Berry to Michelle Pfeiffer, have actually had her just be a cat burglar. She's actually a cat burglar in this movie, and she's a badass, she kicks ass, but she doesn't, she isn't crazy. She's not that sort of crazy female. There's this aspect of, like, what is it, the yellow wallpaper or something like that. There's a short story basically about this woman who goes crazy because men think she's crazy, and that's sort of the way that Catwoman has been, given to us from specifically someone like Tim Burton, where, she's not really a strong female character. She's just someone who went batshit crazy. She's either a dumb ditz or she goes crazy, and the craziness is what gives her strength. And that's not really, that message doesn't really send a good feminist message, in my opinion. I feel like the Catwoman of The Dark Knight Rises is very much a strong female character who's in control of her faculties and knows how to kick some ass, but at the same time doesn't go so far as to be like the Black Widow of like Iron Man 2, where she's badass because it turns Ben on. You know what I mean? She's very grounded. There's no cleavage in this movie, sadly. but I mean, seriously though, I mean, she really embodies that strong female character of Catwoman that we know that we don't have in the New 52, but we know. Bane, as I said before, one of the best realized characters of this film, even though he does, again, still fall a little bit short. But Bane in this movie is really, really fantastic. You get the moment where he, pulls the Dark Knight, puts him up over his head, and breaks his back. Like, that happens in this movie. I really didn't expect it to happen, but it did. So that was really cool. Bane kicks a lot of butt in this movie. He is a brutal-ass killing machine, and you really, he has this booming voice that's really almost melodic. I mean, most characters, Batman is like, rah, 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 rah. And most of the characters in the Dark Knight movies have been very gruff sounding. Bane actually, he walks around and he talks like this, except it's so loud that it's not as silly as I'm making it sound, I guess. But he walks into a room and he's menacing, like, that mask and the level he'll take his commitment to something makes him threatening. And he has, again, this boisterous voice that should almost make him seem silly, but the way it comes through in the movie, based on the actions that go along with that voice, is you come to be afraid of that voice. You dread it. Let's see, what else what else can I geek out about? The Bat was really, really cool to see. I really enjoyed the fact, even though it was, done in a way that didn't fully capture the experience and, never could. I have to say that seeing No Man's Land in a movie is something I've always wanted to see. Of course, that's almost Batman 4. Like, that should be its own film. Excuse me. But nevertheless, the whole No Man's Land notion was absolutely fantastic. It was something that I've always wanted to see, and it was really great seeing it in this movie. In No Man's Land, you don't get, it's not, the way the structure of the movie is set up, you don't get to have the segregation of Gotham where, the demons and Two-Face's boys and, Batman and everybody has their own quadrants and things like that. It's really just Bane, and then, this underground movement led by Jim Gordon and company. So you don't get the full effect of No Man's Land, but still seeing that was just absolutely awesome. Sorry, I was going somewhere with that. I didn't mean to just repeat myself. I just kind of lost it. Anyway, oh, I know what I was going to say. So, nevertheless, even though Bane is sort of in grand control of everything, you still get to see cameo appearances from other characters that's fun. So we get yet another appearance from Scarecrow in this movie in a really great sort of position. I feel like if Two-Face was still alive, it would have been nice to see him again, but of course he's not. He died in The Dark Knight. And instead you get the Scarecrow in this kind of unusual position, but it was still cool to see him and get a chance to, experience that character again, even if it was just briefly, and even if the cameo appearance he did make was kind of like, wow, it's kind of weird to see Scarecrow in that position, but still it was pretty cool. Let's see. Those are the biggest things that were really awesome. You get a huge, spectacular fight at the end, and you get an interesting twist on Batman. I am someone who thinks that Batman can never stop being Batman. Now, at the beginning of this movie, Batman isn't Batman. He's not been Batman for 8 years, and he comes back. I find that kind of difficult to believe. However, you know, this is Christopher Nolan's conclusion, and it's really great seeing how Christopher Nolan wraps everything up. And so at the end of this movie, you see Batman go away. And I'm not going to say if he dies or not, but there's a really beautiful moment with Alfred. And it's something that happens partway through the movie and is reprised. And he's talking about how he... And this is one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie, where Alfred talks about the time when Bruce Wayne was gone. And this is one of those moments, like, this is a Christopher Nolan moment in the sense that, like, you know, in the comics, we never saw Bruce Wayne take a gun to go to court and plan on killing Joe Chill. That never happened. But I can totally picture that, and I can see where Bruce Wayne was at that time. And this is an Alfred moment, kind of in that same vein, where it's like, you've never seen this side of Alfred in the comics, not specifically. But it's so prevalent, you know, it makes so much sense, and it's so exactly what you would expect if this were just one story in and of itself. And it's this moment with Alfred, and Bruce is thinking about putting the cowl back on. Maybe he already has once, and Alfred keeps questioning him, and, you know, as you saw in the preview, I buried enough members of the Wayne family, right? And Alfred approaches him, and he's like, you know, when you were gone for 7 years, and this is when he's, you know, being trained by Ra's al Ghul and among other things in Chinese prison. When you were gone for 7 years, honestly, I hoped you would never come back, because I knew there was nothing for you here in Gotham except misery, because of the history that you have. And, you know, the Batman for Alfred is in many ways, you know, an embodiment of that misery, that Bruce Wayne's misery, and he wishes that he had never come back. And he says that he goes, while Bruce Wayne was gone, and he's always done this, but particularly while Bruce Wayne was gone, he would always take a 2-week vacation to Florence, Italy. And he hoped, beyond hope, that he would see Bruce Wayne sitting across from him at a table, just a few tables down, maybe he has a family, and maybe, you know, a wife and children, and he's happy. And that would have been enough for Alfred. And that is just a beautiful picture of, like, Alfred's perspective on Batman. And the whole idea of, I wish you had never come home, is just really, like, it hits me here. Like, you know, I mean, that's just... That, for me, was the scene. That scene alone is worth going to see the movie for, because it was a beautiful moment. And at the end, all I'm going to say is you see Alfred over a grave weeping. And that was a really beautiful moment, too. Of all the characters in the movie, Alfred actually, like, Bane was the closest to a new character that was well realized. Alfred, in many ways, was actually, even though he's mostly in the beginning and a little bit at the end, was a very full, felt like exactly the character I wanted to see in The Dark Knight Rises. Batman himself, as a reprised character, and I'm going a little bit more into critics mode here, but he does actually fall a little bit slight, because again, I have trouble picturing him not being Batman for 8 years. I just can't buy that, even in Christopher Nolan's world. But again, you know, it's his take, it's the big wrap up, and it was satisfying to sit down and watch all 3 films in a row and get the full picture. So I'm really excited, because I am going to go see this movie again on Sunday, see it in IMAX, get the full picture, literally, and I'm just gonna geek out. I'm gonna have fun. It's not The Dark Knight, or it's not The Dark Knight. It never will be The Dark Knight. Frankly, it's not The Batman Begins either. And that's the part where I am disappointed. I wish we would have gotten something in between Batman Begins quality and Dark Knight quality. Instead, I feel like it's a pretty big step backward overall. But there's enough fan stuff in here that it's just a blast. And yes, you know, you see Talia, you see Robin, you see Bane, you see Catwoman, like, what could be bad about that? So anyway, that's my review of The Dark Knight Rises. I hope I didn't go on too long, however, I made no promises to people that this would be short. My goal is not to be as long as James Donnelly's shortest video. So anyway, that's my review of The Dark Knight Rises. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all very soon. Really quick, before I forget, and I'm gonna do this in I'm gonna do a separate video, just to quick announce this for those of you who aren't still watching, but I will not have comic books reviewed for you this Wednesday. I'm going to be on vacation. I'm going to be out of town, nowhere near a comic book shop, nowhere near the internet. So I will have probably a double review the following Wednesday, but this Wednesday I'm going to take the week off. So anyway, those of you who watch this whole video and want to pass it along to some of our fellow YouTubers, please do. And again, I'll note that in a separate video before I leave, just so that everybody kind of knows what's up. Alright guys, this is Beardo signing off. Have a good one, everyone. Merry Dark Knight Rises Day.